You know, the community is our home. It is our place of business, and it is a place that, you know, we're raising our children or our grandchildren, and it's really important for us to really give back to what I feel as a whole has given each of us so much. And so it's really fulfilling, I think, a basic obligation that each of us should have to, you know, the wonderful community in which we live.
Well, the community is one that I grew up in, and I feel that we're just neighbor helping neighbor. People have needs in the community. People have desires to help their neighbors, and that's what started Reach Out Lakota, actually.
Locally for me would be the Hamilton Mayor, Pat Moeller. You see him at absolutely everything, and not just the big city council, the big events. You see him at community events, sporting events at the school, in real true support of Hamilton and what's going around. And for me, I see him get out of the way a lot to enable the city staff and the community to get on with things. He's not there for the adulation, he's there in complete support. And it speaks a lot about him and what's going on in Hamilton, and I looked up to that very much.
Patty Alderson is the person I look up to the most, not just because of what she's done, but because of the kind of person she is. She doesn't take no for an answer. She gets things done, especially when she sees a need for it. And she works just as hard as everybody else on that team.
The top of my bucket list to be a volunteer at the Rose Bowl Parade and help build a float. Just really want to do that, so yeah, one day.
My bucket list, it's sort of a twofer. I'd love to do color commentary for a Reds game or a Australian cricket test match. I think that'd be fun for me. I'm not so sure for the listening and viewing public, but I'd sure enjoy that a lot.
That is a list that is forever enduring, if you would. There's no end to the things that I want to do. But if I had to really narrow it down, it would be to bring people together. Service families, children, communities, and of course neighborhoods. It doesn't matter what zip code we live in. The idea here is for all of us to come together in some commonality, if you would, where everything is equal.
I think my bucket list is pretty short, actually. I just really have committed myself the last 4 or 5 years to being very closely involved with my family. And I've been watching the young ones grow up and so forth, so I think that really, it's a very boring bucket list, but that really is my bucket list.
I would say I'm actually a breast cancer survivor, 22 years, so the most difficult thing was just deciding the most aggressive form of chemo to take. I think that's probably the toughest decision I've ever had to make, and just trying to deal with all that.
I took care of my mother for 7 years, and she was deaf, and I eventually had to become her guardian. So those decisions on my own over the years for her, on her behalf, were the hardest ones I think I've ever made.
I think you have to walk the talk. You have to be there when people go to the homeless shelter to feed the needy. You have to be there when you have, you know, an amazing educational program. You have to support people in their goals and aspirations to build a better community, a stronger community. And then you have to empower them with resources and, you know, whatever it is that you could do in order to allow them to be successful. So I think as a leader, you're never going to truly achieve success unless your team is vested and successful in what they want to achieve.
Show them the list of groups, organization, and present company accepted, of how we can work together to get the message out. That we have to look beyond skin color, gender, race, to just break down all those barriers that seem to be in the way of something very, very simple to do. And if we truly care about our communities, our children, our family, and those services that are providing, if you would, the kind of leadership that we want, then maybe I can turn some heads.
think the 80s and my teenage years, there is a decade of bad haircuts going on across the board for many of us. And I may have lived in a different country at the time, but wasn't immune to all of that. So I'm happy never to see those photos again.
The only thing I can think of is having big 80s hair. So big hair from the 80s. So.